We are just 24 days from an election for President of the United States of America. The so-called experts tell us that the American people don't think it'll make much difference who's elected and aren't convinced that all that much is at stake. That simply isn't true, and the experts are wrong. In fact, much is at stake. Our economy, our families, our cities, our international credibility, indeed our nation's very future. It matters very much that our families get overdue tax relief. It matters very much that we conduct a real war on drugs. It matters very much that we balance our budget, improve our schools, save and strengthen Medicare, and restore the reward for entrepreneurial risk-taking and job creation in America. But it matters just as much that we restore the trust and integrity of government and the presidency itself. On all these issues, in this election year, the stakes could not be higher. Bob Dole is the best man for America. He'll bring respect, credibility, and integrity back to the Oval Office. He is a man of unparalleled honor and principle. His word is his bond. He is a man of principle who will act on principle. And he cares about the next generation, not simply the next election. Bob Dole is not running for office to be somebody. He is running for president to do something good and great for our country. Just last Thursday, Ted Van Dyke, a distinguished longtime Democratic presidential advisor, wrote in the Wall Street Journal that, quote, Mr. Clinton has followed a consistent pattern. First, he puts a finger in the air. He judges the prevailing wind. Then he proposes, opposes, or abandons a policy position or a person on the basis of the president's perceived short-term interest, end of quote. He went on to say that he'll be voting for Bob Dole based on character. When Bill Clinton took office, he promised to have, in his words, quote, the most ethical administration in history. And he was right to set that high standard. But 4 years later, the words that seem to characterize the ethics of this administration are words like Travelgate, Filegate, independent counsels, and possible presidential pardons. These problems add up to a pattern that is sad and troubling to all Americans, Democrat, Republican, and independents, an arrogance of power, the avoidance of responsibility, the habit of half-truths. For this administration, taking credit is everything, and the truth seems to be expendable. We've seen the results. The politics of this administration lead to cynicism. They promise a tax cut, give us the opposite. They promise to make abortion rare, and then they veto a measure to ban the most gruesome act of killing, a partially born infant. They blame others for their failures, as in the case of health care reform. They take credit they don't deserve, as in the case of welfare reform. They declare victory in the face of foreign policy failures. They've deliberately distorted policy ideas that have been advanced by Republicans, and then use these distortions to frighten people about Medicare, veterans benefits, and student loans. And all this has understandably made young Americans less interested and less involved in politics, and even less hopeful about changing things for the better. Franklin Roosevelt said in 1932 that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. But unfortunately, the only thing the Clinton administration has to offer is fear. Fear of destroying Medicare, fear of deficits, fear of budget cuts, and the list of distortions and exaggeration sadly goes on and on. It's time for some direct questions. How in the long run can a democracy work if its institutions and its leaders don't inspire trust? How can a president lead America in confronting the real problems when he's become a source of cynicism? How can we be the city set on a hill if our foreign policy is ambiguous and capricious? I know some people say, well, everyone in Washington is like that, and that all politicians are the same. Well, Bob Dole isn't. He has spent his career and his life disproving that cynical observation. He believes in openness and accountability and puts his trust in God and the American people. Bob Dole will give us an administration worthy of our trust, our faith, and most of all, our respect. We don't believe in disparaging anyone's personal character. Bob Dole and I have never done it, and we won't start now. But we do have a duty to talk about this administration's public posturing and their public disregard for the very standards that they have set for themselves. As you ponder your options on November 5th, I know you'll take a close look at the record and the pledge of Bob Dole. He is a leader who will govern by principle, not expediency. When he says he'll cut tax rates and reduce the regulatory burden, it's not some scheme. It is his heartfelt desire to expand our economy, empower our families, and help America reach its boundless potential. Thank you for listening, and may God bless America.